Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Thanks to Lucas and the Satsconf team for putting together such an amazing panel. This panel is labeled Building Bitcoin Communities Globally. So we're going to hear from our panelists talking about different diverse topics in terms of how they're building their communities through their initiatives and through their companies. We can start with some brief introductions. I'll kick us off. My name is Arsh. I'm from the Human Rights Foundation. We are a nonprofit that does a lot of civil liberties work to defend human rights in authoritarian regimes using technologies such as Bitcoin. So we have a Bitcoin development fund that supports open source developers and educational initiatives.
Okay, my name is Noelyne. I work with a company called Machankura mainly, but I also carry out Bitcoin education and translation of Bitcoin content into Swahili. That's the Kenyan language, and other several Bitcoin education programs, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Oi, galera. My name is Tom. I work for a company called Azteco. We're also sponsoring the conference. And what we do Bitcoin vouchers. So our mission is to make accessing Bitcoin as easy as topping up your mobile phone, and to then easily get small quantities of Bitcoin in your wallet to save, to send, to spend. In that line of work, so I'm responsible for sales, and we're currently active in many countries that have people that otherwise don't have good access to financial rails. And we're talking about, for example, Brazil. We're talking about other countries like South Africa. We're also focusing on Mexico. And so, yeah, super glad to be on this panel with these lovely people.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm Lorena Ortiz. I'm from Mexico City. I work as community master for Fedi. That is a company that's building a super app over Fedi Mint, that is an open source protocol for Bitcoin. And I also own a bar in Mexico City that's called Bitcoin Embassy Bar. We're about to accomplish 5 years now. And well, you're welcome anytime you visit Mexico City. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah, passing it back to Noelyne. Tell us about some of your initiatives through Machankura and what you guys do.
Okay. So even before Machankura, I can say in Africa we realized we have maybe a problem in terms of getting Bitcoin to the people. And the main challenge was the literacy. It's possible for people to understand sound money, but understanding Bitcoin itself was a challenge. So the first thing we decided to tackle was the Bitcoin education aspect of it. And the only way to get Bitcoin education was through translation of Bitcoin content into African languages. So we started out with a company called Exonumia, in which we carried out translation of Bitcoin literature into several African languages. So we have, like in South Africa, the Zulu, and in Nigeria, the Shona language. In Kenya, we have Swahili. Even in Uganda, we did a bit of Baganda. And with that, first of all, once they were able to understand the literature, it was easy for us to now introduce Machankura. So Machankura is a way in which people can be able, it's actually just a Bitcoin wallet that has integrated USSD. And with this, people can be able to send and receive Bitcoin without internet connection. You realize that internet connectivity in Africa is a challenge, really. Even where you can be able to access internet, it's still very expensive for most of the population to afford. And so Machankura came in as the best solution for us to be able to integrate this and be able to reach majority of the rural population. And besides that, smartphone use in Africa is not quite as huge in terms of the uptake. So people use feature phones. If you know the Nokia 3310, that's mostly what majority of the population still uses. And this was a way for us to reach majority of the people.
Yeah, and we're going to come back to a lot of the macroeconomic landscape in Africa as well. Talking about why Machankura exists, and why have translations, and why Bitcoin matters for Africa. But I would keep the same question to Tom as well. How is Azteco impacting communities globally?
Yeah, so it's very interesting what you said, Noelyne. First of all, I wanna just say something about that. So I want to make the example of two things that we all really know and use. First of all, WhatsApp. I think people know WhatsApp and they use it. They use it because it's easy to communicate. And I think similarly, there's a case to be made for Bitcoin, where if we let people use it without having to, or a different way for people to be educated is by using it in small quantities, right? And so when they use it in small quantities, they are able to transact where before they weren't, right? And so everybody knows how to use WhatsApp. I think Bitcoin needs to be as usable through tools, through wallets, as WhatsApp. So people don't need to know per se the whole underlying ideological grounds of Bitcoin. They don't per se need to know that. They can just use it. Oh, wow, this works, right? I'm now able to interact. Of course, as Noelyne pointed out, the main challenge there is how do people get Bitcoin in their hands? And so you're working with Machankura as well, which is a project that is one of the most brilliant projects in Bitcoin, because it even allows people to interact with the Bitcoin network without an internet connection. And so we also integrated with Azteco with Machankura in order to enable people that otherwise would never be able to, I don't know, make an exchange account or do all these things. So I think the main, and then going back to your original question, Arsh, is that the main thing here is that all these things are doable because there's 1 billion people in the world, for example, that do not have a bank account, but that do have a smartphone. So all these people can do WhatsApp, can use WhatsApp. All these people use the normal mobile phone network. And so I think to get people to use Bitcoin, we just need to get Bitcoin to those communities. And I think that's, Machankura is playing a big part, and that's the mission of Azteco, right? And so the question then is, how do we do that? Of course, it's a big challenge. I could probably talk about that and our adventures in doing that for 2 hours, but I don't want to take hostage of this panel. But one of the ways we're doing that is through, for example, working with Machankura or working with existing distribution networks. Because all those people in Africa, they already top up their mobile phone. They already go to a store to top up their mobile phone. So these distribution networks are already there and can, of course, be used, quote-unquote, weaponized with Bitcoin as well. So I think that's a bit what we're trying to tap in various countries worldwide with Azteco.
Yeah, definitely. And Lorena, I know Fedi is making a similar impact for a lot of communities. We've seen multiple new federations. Fedi going to different conferences and kicking off its wallet. So tell us a little bit more about Fedi and how it's impacting communities.
Yeah, one of the special things that I like about Fedi is that it's focused on communities. In communities, we build trust between each other. We have different people that are taking care of others, and that's what Fedi is doing. It's empowering people, communities, through Bitcoin, through the super app that they're building. And the other thing that I really like about Fedi is that, as Tom mentioned, as Noelyne mentioned, we are trying to build something that is easier to use for the regular user. That's something that your grandma can use, your aunt can use, your cousins can use, everybody can use, and that's what we are trying to figure out, how to make Bitcoin easier for those people that maybe don't want to learn a lot about Bitcoin, or maybe it's just too difficult to them. Because we have accomplished, all we are in this stage, we all have accomplished some level of knowledge about Bitcoin, but it hasn't been an easy road, And I think about my grandmother, and she won't be able to know how Bitcoin works. So if we want Bitcoin to be for everybody, we have to make Bitcoin to adopt some other ways to be used for everybody.
Do you also want to touch on how Fedi Mint enables that as well?
How Fedi what? Sorry.
How Fedi Mint enables being able to use Bitcoin better for everyone?
Yeah, sure. Well, Fedi Mint allows to create something called federations. The federations can be for your family, a group of friends, or your local community, a company. And there are some guardians that keep the keys of the community. But it's not like a multisig where you need the signs of everyone that has the keys. But the guardians only can restore the keys in case somebody from the community loses their wallet. So Fedi Mint allows this, and Fedi is working on that. Also, we can create something more. We can create something like a chat. As you said, Tom, everybody uses WhatsApp. Imagine transferring through some kind of WhatsApp to your grandmother Bitcoin. And Fedi is also creating like some kind of hub in the super app, so you can have all your Bitcoin tools in one place. That way your grandmother can also find really quick the Bitrefill app and pays for some Uber card or some other products with Bitcoin that you're sending through the chat. So this way it's easier to use, not just for your grandma, but for companies, communities, families, everyone.
I had maybe one addition. This will sound strange, but I want to talk more about your grandmother, Lorena. No, so I get this a lot, right? Like certain people will not know how Bitcoin works, and I probably think that's true. That's a fair assumption. And I mean, my only addition there would be, how many people know how end-to-end encryption works in WhatsApp? Nobody knows, right? We're just using WhatsApp on a daily basis. Or how many people know how fiat money works, right? Even I studied it. I don't even know perfectly how it works. It's hard to understand. So I think knowing how something works doesn't need to be a prerequisite if the tools are easy enough. So I can send you a WhatsApp afterwards to thank you for the lovely panel without having to know, how does end-to-end encryption works. And I think that's the beauty with Bitcoin as well. So if we get it in the hands of many people, and if we get them to use it, they will use it not because they're convinced about the technology. No, they will use it because they want to send money. They will use it because they want to spend money. And they will use it because they want to save money. And they instinctively know, oh, wow, this is better than, I don't know, the Kenyan shilling or the South African rand.
Maybe I want to talk about maybe Fedi. I've interacted with Fedi in Uganda. There's a lady called Meron. She works with the Eritrean refugees. There's a problem in the financial sector in terms of human rights violation, Eritrean refugees, and she's done an impressive job integrating the Eritrean refugee situation in Uganda. They use Fedi, so it's a wonderful use case. They're doing that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of getting Bitcoin in many hands as possible, how many what's the landscape for Machankura right now? Like, how many countries are you guys in Africa, and what are sort of the overarching goals of using it?
So at the moment, we are in 7 African countries where the USSD is currently working. Maybe in countries like Uganda and Tanzania, we had a bit of regulatory problem with the USSD code. But as Lorena was talking about integrating WhatsApp, so Machankura enabled WhatsApp integration. So now even other African countries can be able to use Machankura. I think even here in Brazil, can be able to access and just create a Machankura wallet. So we integrated the WhatsApp API. Even you can just try it, and you can be able to just get your Machankura wallet. So we have definitely more African countries in it. And so far, so good. The uptake has been really encouraging. People do understand sound money in Africa because people do channel their money mostly in real estate and seeing Bitcoin as an avenue, especially to escape inflation and devaluation of currencies, it's really a go-to. You don't really have to explain much.
Yeah, let's hit a little deeper on that point when it comes to inflation and devaluation. Africa has a lot of they have colonial systems. There's a lot of devaluation. So given the landscape of Machankura participating in these markets, what's the best way to get it to more and more people? And I'd also ask you to touch on the CIFA system as well.
When looking at the Africa landscape, I keep on saying I don't think Africa really left colonialism, really, because we still undergo monetary colonialism. I think Gladstone through HRF has touched on the IMF and the World Bank, but also, I don't know, maybe the most people are not aware, but there are currently around 14 African countries that are under the CFA franc. So CFA franc is basically, their currencies are pegged to the euro, and this is controlled by the French monetary system. So the currency is pegged to the euro, and France is in charge of making the monetary decisions of the country. So you find some time back, they woke up and devalued the currency by 50%. So you wake up and your purchasing power is devalued by 50%. This affects so many African countries. And that's why we find countries like Niger recently had a coup, Burkina Faso, Mali. These are countries that are basically trying to get out of this monetary colonialism that is currently undergoing. And it's, I guess, where we're at. And we are trying to get these countries to know, or rather the people in the country to know that there is a way out right now. If you can be able to use another monetary system, it will be good for you.
I mean, and that's 15 countries, over 180 million people that live under modern-day monetary colonialism by France. And a lot of people in the world don't know about it. Even people living in Africa don't know about it, right? Like, Noelyne, you mentioned that before you started looking into Bitcoin.
Before I got into Bitcoin, I really had no idea how bad it was. I had no idea about it. So it's something that right now is coming to light, and we're wondering, it's in 2023, why is this still happening?
Yeah, I mean, like, if France is controlling all imports, exports, basically the price of money for over 180 million people. So I think if Bitcoin can come into play here, and if we can get more tools for people, in those specific parts to use, I mean, that's huge for people. Going back to even Azteco, right? Like, getting vouchers in the hands of more merchants. What does that look like? Like, what are some of the challenges? You touched on this earlier. What are some of the challenges of Azteco in terms of onboarding merchants?
Yeah, so where to start if we talk about challenges? So I think the way we currently look at this is in a sort of, how can we scale this in an efficient way, right? And so if you look at how to scale this in an efficient way, I think we look at existing distribution channels, right? So all these, I was in Kenya, and I was chatting with you about that, Noelyne, and when I was there, it was, I don't know, it was 10 years ago or something like that. I lived in a small rural Kenyan village for 3 months. My eyes fell open, like wide open, because I was a stupid Westerner that didn't realize, oh wow, these people, they just go to the store, they just buy mobile top-ups, they have M-Pesa, and they can transact. So if you think about this in such a way, where do these people buy those top-ups? And so, even though it's different distribution than a big supermarket that I'm familiar with in Portugal, for example, it's distribution, right? So what we try to do with Azteco, we try to tap into those existing distribution networks. And so it's not easy because, of course, the culture is completely different. We need to count on people like Noelyne, which can retranslate things that we say to people over there, right? And so that's super important. And so that's the approach we're taking for distribution. Of course, to get there, we had to find out the hard way that it's difficult. It's difficult to find the networks. It's difficult to get in touch with the networks. And once you get in touch with those networks, it's difficult to convince them because Bitcoin is considered something dangerous. It's considered something, ooh, what will the central bank say about this? And so on and so forth. So I think that's one challenge of the bigger networks. Then, of course, we have more, and Noelyne, you're selling Azteco vouchers to your local community as well. We also have what I would describe as more like the grassroots kind of adoption, where people like Noelyne who do get it distribute Azteco vouchers. Of course, the challenge is how do you scale that? I think if you look at it all together, I think the one leads to the other. Because if we start grassroots, we can then go back to the bigger networks and say, look, this is already happening. If you're not going to do it, other people will do it. And so it's a continuous game in different countries across Africa, also Latin America, to get there. And it's a messy process, but we're getting somewhere. And we've been doing well. It's not perfect yet, nothing is. But each time we're entering more countries, we're digging deeper by integrating, for example, with Machankura, all these kind of things. And so I think we're proving that you can overcome these challenges. And I think these challenges, they're not just challenges that only we have faced, right? They're challenges also of other technologies. And I think the past has also proven that, everybody's using WhatsApp in Kenya, everybody's using WhatsApp everywhere in the world, in Mexico. I think it's proven that these challenges can be overcome. And so we're trying to get there step by step. We're making good results. We're not there yet, but I think we're on our way.
Yeah, and going one by one, right? Like trying to orange pill merchants, is definitely very difficult. And I know the sentiments vary throughout different continents and different countries. So where's Azteco? Where do you see the most adoption for Azteco right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So before I answer, I think it's important to talk the language of each person you're trying to do something for you. And so the merchant, and I found this out the hard way, if you try to quote-unquote orange pill them, they react badly. But if you say to them, look, we're going to provide you something that will lead more traffic to your store, they look differently at you. Oh, wow, this is what is this thing? And then you got their attention. So I think that's very important to talk in their language. That being said, so Azteco is focusing heavily on a number of Central Latin American markets. Mexico is a big one. Brazil is a big one, obviously. And so if you go to azte.co, you can actually find our buy flow, our new buy flow for people in Brazil to buy an Azteco voucher in Brazil, as an example. Then we're also working on markets like South Africa, which is also a market that has big population, interesting type of demographics. Other than that, we're also active in different industries like gift cards, more traditional gift cards. That's of course more like a Western thing, obviously. But as far as developing markets is concerned, Central Latin America, African countries like South Africa, I think Kenya would also be a very interesting one. It is a tougher cookie to crack than South Africa, and I think Noelyne, you will probably
Quite tough.
yeah, it's like expert level, but I'm sure we're working on both a little bit more on South Africa than on Kenya. But it's a bit like the model where we have to choose beachhead markets, and when we get our foot on the ground there, from there it will be way more easy to go to Kenya, to go to Nigeria. Kenya and Nigeria are more difficult than South Africa, and even though South Africa is already not very easy, but that's a bit. In a nutshell, if I would have to name a few markets for us important in the months to come, I would name those markets.
I think the overall theme here is grassroots, right? And for Fedi even, when you guys are onboarding more countries, and you guys have so many different people all over the place connecting with different communities. What have some of the challenges been like with Fedi and obviously some of the growth as well?
Well, we as company, we have different community masters. I'm from Latam. We have another community master in Africa. We have another community master in Asia. So we are trying to focus on all these places where Bitcoin, it's a need. It's not just something new or something amazing to play with, no. These communities that are based in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, that really needs this technology to be free. Because one of the most amazing things about Fedi is that it allows Bitcoin to be more private. Because with the federations, we don't need to make a login, like giving our real name or our email address. You just need to put a name that you want. It can be your real name or no, and keep the privacy in the federation, and keep the privacy through the transactions also. So there are several countries where this technology is needed, and we are trying to figure out a way to bring Bitcoin to these communities. Also, there are some places in Asia, Africa, and Latin America where there are no banks. So communities by themselves has built like a banking system, like a system of loans and a system of distributing the gains of the community. So if the communities has already been doing this for ages, they can do it better with Bitcoin. That's another tool that will be able with Fedi. So as you said, Tom, traveling around, open your eyes. And you can explore all these amazing things that communities has been building by themselves and empower them, bringing this tool to them and allowing them to be better, to have more development, to have more richness in their community, and to keep them that way, because that's one of the biggest problems that Bitcoin solves, the fiat money.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe just to add on to what Lorena has mentioned, it's no surprise that circular economies are developing in the global south because there's a dire need for Bitcoin. Maybe just to mention a few. So in Africa, maybe one of the best case, Bitcoin Ekasi in South Africa. I like what they've managed to do because in Africa, we're still in the phase where Bitcoin is a scam to most governments, and trying to get the government to regulate it, it's a bit of a hassle. So Bitcoin Ekasi has managed to at least get a few merchants in their community to accept Bitcoin, and this way we have already Bitcoin circulating in the place. There's another one coming up in Ghana, Bitcoin Dua, that's in the process. There's a Bitcoin Django. There's a couple of education also going on. We have Bitcoin Dada in Kenya. And we hope at least maybe if we can continue the education processes, people eventually will be able to start their own businesses and accept Bitcoin that way. We won't have to wait for regulations or wait for governments to tell us what to do. And yet we already have a way to fix things.
Yeah. Maybe one more addition here, as I'm kind of the only, naive white guy here. No, but when I went to Kenya, and I told you, Noelyne, the story, I visited one of those slums, right? One of the biggest slums near Nairobi. And, I was just 10 years younger, even more naive than I am today, younger as well. And I was shocked because behind the scenes of that, favela, right, of that slum, I was given a tour by people that were making music, so artists in that slum. So I was thinking, artists in a slum, like people in a slum, they barely have a toilet, so how can they make music? That was my thinking, honestly. But I realized, as they guided me into deeper into the slum, that there was a fully equipped production studio in the middle of that slum. So I was shocked by that. I was shocked, and it was a big mirror for me, and it made me realize, okay, those are people, those are people that do normal things as we do in our cities, as people do in Sao Paulo. They make music, they go to the butchery, they buy stuff, they transact, they have a cell phone, maybe not all of them, but they have access to cell phones, so they have all those things we have. And I think one thing I also think there is important to realize for people like me and people working for Western companies is to give people the tools and then let them use the tools. And so it's not about us saying you should do it like this, or you should know that Bitcoin is this and that, or you should use it in XYZ way. No, it's give them the tool, give him the access in the channels that they know, and they'll use it. And what I've come to realize is that people in those situations with less resources, they are incredibly creative with resources in ways that are insane, that I could not have imagined before. And I think that Machankura, for example, for me is the pinnacle of that. Nobody would have thought about that. It's only somebody from that place that can think about solutions like that. And so we just need to make sure that we give those people the tools, they will use them, and it will, quote unquote, set them free, at least in a certain, financial kind of way.
Yeah, and Lorena, this is the perfect pass off to you, because I know we were talking, backstage about how talking with different community masters at Fedi, and even from things that you've seen, onboarding your personal family, I know you wanted to touch briefly on self-custody as well, and how Fedi enables that, and ways to kind of onboard and be able to self-custody your Bitcoin.
Yeah, sure. Well, I don't know if somebody from your family owns Bitcoin. Okay, but do they really own it, or you keep the keys for them? Because that was one of the hardest things that I tried to do with my family. My mom, my dad, my aunt, they told me, okay, yeah, this Bitcoin thing sounds cool, but I can't keep the keys because I always forget my password from my email, Where will I keep the keys, because I don't know how to do it. And even if I explained to them, they weren't able to do that. And I tried and I tried and I tried. And through the years, I realized that maybe that wasn't the way for them to use Bitcoin. Maybe we have to find some other ways for them to use Bitcoin. And to be able to transact with Bitcoin without my permission. Because if you keep the keys from your mom, from your grandma, from your aunt, they always need to call you and, okay, I need to take out some Bitcoin. Oh, I don't have my wallet here right now. You will have to wait. So that's a really big issue that is been going on, and it's not being said out loud, because not everybody wants to talk about this. But maybe self-custody is not for everyone, and it's okay. But maybe we as a community, we as a family, can help them to use Bitcoin in an easier way that is more free than to just keep it in your wallet and maybe they will let you know when they have to use it. But yeah, there's some other ways that we have to build to allow more people to use it. And that's one of the amazing things that all of three here, well, everybody here is doing, that we're building tools for Bitcoin to be usable for everybody.
That's right. That's a very good point. And I think, chiming in there, with Azteco, for example, for Lightning vouchers, we work with Wallet of Satoshi. Why do we work with Wallet of Satoshi? Because it's easy to use, right? Of course, we often get criticized. People say, yeah, but Wallet of Satoshi, it's a custodial wallet. What are you doing, Azteco? For us, it's better for people to use Bitcoin than for people not to use Bitcoin. And we can theoretize in terms of like, what is theoretically the endpoint and the perfect situation. Of course, I agree. The perfect situation is fully custodial and so on and so forth. But it's not easy for people to use something if it requires them to be technically more proficient than they're able to be. And so again, I'm taking back the example of WhatsApp. What people want is utility. Right? They want to save, send, spend. They don't care about Bitcoin per se, right? It solves a problem for them. Same thing. So if people use Wallet of Satoshi, they use Bitcoin, they save, send, spend. Easy like that. Of course, as the tools improve, as adoption increases, I think we'll get to a point where maybe a company like Apple will say, oh wow, this thing is now, it's time for us to jump in. Apple will make every iPhone a custodial wallet, a self-custodial wallet, I mean, like a non-custodial, self-custodial wallet. So I think the danger we can have with Bitcoin and thinking about adoption is this appeal to perfection. And we can only onboard people if we do it, quote unquote, the perfect way. I think personally that it's better to start somewhere and to spread Bitcoin in small quantities, to then from there have more adoption and have more incentives for other companies to work on better solutions and on easier to use solutions. I think that's the only additional point I wanted to make with what Lorena was saying.
It's a journey. Sure.
Absolutely.
And another thing that is really important is that, well, we have to trust, when we use custody wallets, we have to trust somebody that we don't know, right? The developer, I don't know where he is or where she is or whatever. And you have to trust somebody that you have never seen and you don't know where it is, right? But with other kind of tools, the ones that are allowed by Fedi, the one that is developed by Fedi, you can trust the people that you already know. You can trust the people that you already work with every day, talk every day, that is part of your family. So this is another way to use Bitcoin, a new way. And the good thing about Bitcoin is that it's always growing up, it's always developing something new. We are implementing other things that are allowing people to use it in a better way.
Yeah, definitely. We're coming close to time here, but I think we can kind of wrap with some conclusions. A question for the panel. I just wanted to ask, what makes you guys excited and motivated to keep building for Bitcoin communities globally?
I guess for me, what excites me is every time I do that Lightning transaction and someone receives Bitcoin for the very first time, the smile or the, wow, this thing is existent. I have an avenue to escape inflation. I can finally store value and my money can maintain its value over a long period of time. It's a very wonderful feeling, especially when somebody just figures out, you know what, I really don't have to stay in the system and suffer through it. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that gives me motivation to just keep on educating, keep on giving the information out there. Yeah.
Tom, what about you?
What makes me happy, excited? Yeah, a lot of things. Mostly like good waves. But other than that, I think when I see people getting access with Bitcoin and using it to serve their goals, that really makes me happy. And so it could be anything, right? It could be escaping from, in high inflation. It could be an Argentinian that says, oh, wow, I'm now saving in Bitcoin. It could be somebody sending money to their grandma overseas. It could be somebody that is finally able to use online payments, because lots of people have a cell phone, they don't have a credit card, so they're not able to even pay for digital goods. So they use Bitcoin. And they go to Bitrefill and they buy, I don't know, one or the other top-up. When I see that adoption happening, so people really using Bitcoin in a way, that really makes me excited. And what also makes me excited is I think there will be a time where Bitcoin will be boring. And I'm looking forward to that. Because when Bitcoin is boring, when we don't have to have conferences like these anymore, don't get me wrong, I like to be here, like these conferences, it means that it will have become something that people just use on a daily basis. And think about that. When we are not doing these conferences anymore, okay, that's sad, but on the other hand, it will be a situation where people really use Bitcoin. It's like, why do you need to talk about WhatsApp? This Tom is talking about WhatsApp all the time. What's wrong with this guy? Like, I want to get Bitcoin there. And so the thought of that makes me really excited.
Well, personally, I think that the most exciting thing that has happened to me through Bitcoin is connecting with people like you and like you, and to be able to know people that is really fighting for freedom, that is really developing tools for freedom, to make people free. Because freedom is something really tricky, because you don't realize that you're not free until you get into an obstacle that doesn't allow you to do something that is not harming anybody, but it should be your way to do the things, you know? And that is the most amazing thing about Bitcoin, that it allows people to be free. And we are working on this, and we're fighting for freedom.
Amen. Well, we're out of time, but thank you to the audience for your time, and thank you to our panelists. Let's get a round of applause for our panelists.